Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Amanda, and today I'm going to show you what I do with my sourdough starter. I'm going to tell you how I started it, how I maintain it, how I feed it, what I do with it, how long I've had it, and just kind of go over some of the basics. Sourdough has kind of caught popularity again recently, a lot on Instagram I've heard, and YouTube even, and I've kind of been doing this. I got shared a sourdough starter from my friend at work probably about 7 years ago, and I fed it and I learned how to keep it alive, and I cooked and baked with it. Well, mostly baked with it. You don't really cook with it. Once or twice with that one, and then I accidentally let it die. So I just kind of wanted to share with you guys my journey with sourdough, what I've done with it. I'm still learning. I'm not a professional. If you want a professional, there's plenty of accounts out there, but I'm just showing you what I do as a working mom with a super busy schedule and how I still can incorporate sourdough into our lives and into our meal. Sourdough is always something that is fascinating to me, just to watch the process and to know this sourdough that I started was just with flour and water, and you harvest that natural yeast out of the air basically. And watching the things that I can bake with it and watching the flour and the water and the mixture rise is just like, I don't know why it's so wildly fascinating to me to do this without yeast, but it's kind of one of those things that I really focus on trying to learn and better my skill as a self-sufficiency type of thing, because now I can create tons of different recipes with just a few ingredients. And that's kind of my focus with sourdough. And this year, next year, 2024, I'm really going to focus on learning more about sourdough and perfecting some of my recipes. So I'm going to flip this around and I'm going to show you kind of what I'm doing right now. Okay, here she is. This is what I'm getting ready to put away in my fridge because I am not going to be baking with it anytime soon. I had this whole entire crock that I got from Walmart full to the brim with starter, and I didn't bake with it this week. I got far too busy. Life happens, whatever. So I discarded what I could once it quit feeding, and this is my discard, and I don't like to throw it. I can, I do throw it if I don't have anything I want to do with it, but since I have a 4-day weekend, I really want to bake some stuff with it. You can do discarding cookies. You can do it with pancakes. There's a bunch of different recipes. All you do have to do is either Google or go on Pinterest and put recipes with sourdough discard, and you will get the gamut. Crackers, I mean, you name it, you can do it. So I'm saving this. I wrote discard clearly on it so it doesn't get mistaken, and she's going in my fridge. I say she because my darling husband named her Dora the Explorer. Kind of because, exploring new recipes, Dora. Yeah, real funny. So the name is Dora. I put a tiny bit in the bottom here, like 1/8 of a pint jar. I use a wide mouth because it's easier for mixing. And so I just clean this up. This is my canning funnel. And now I'm going to feed it. I'm going to try and find a way to set up the camera. I'm probably going to use that watermelon so you guys can see what I'm doing and how I'm feeding it, and then what I'm going to do with it after that. Okay, let's hope my camera doesn't fall over. So all I'm going to do now is take some flour, and I've just kind of eyeballed it. I'm not really a measurer. You can measure feeding it with a 1-to-1 ratio and measuring out the water, but I'm not about that life. I'm too busy. So I'm just grabbing a little scooper. This is a 1/2 cup. Doesn't matter what it is, because I'm not measuring it by a 1/2 cup. I'm just using it as my vessel of transportation. And I'm going to put probably all of it in there. So now you see I've got about that much flour. So there's my starter line, and this is all flour. And I'm just going for a consistency thing here. And then I'm going to get some hot water. And some people say, oh, you need to use filtered water and distilled and whatever. Well, I don't. I just use my tap water. So I want it warm, but I don't want it like burning my skin. And so then I'm just going to put a tiny bit in there. Like I didn't even use a lot out of there. Just put a tiny bit in there. And now I'm going to whip it up, and we're going to see what we're working with here. Okay, now see, this is too thick. See how thick that is? That's like bread dough. I don't want it like that. I'm looking for thick pancake batter. So pancake batter that's super thick. So I'm going to add just a tiny bit more. Remember, a little bit of water goes a long way. We're going to whip it up a little bit better. There we go. Now we're getting somewhere. Still a little too thick for me. See how thick that is still? Not quite pancake battery. You don't want it runny because then it's not really going to feed. Your starter is not going to feed off of that flour you put in there. And then I choose to use warm water because it helps mix better. Even though I'm going to be sticking this in the fridge, I'm still going to use warm water just because it helps it mix, you know, a lot nicer. So this is about what I'm looking for. If I can show you here. Sorry, my nose is runny, so I'm sniffing a lot. Oh, I can't even do this. There we go. So it's a super thick pancake batter consistency. Like, it's not going to pour out, but it'll move slowly. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to finish mixing this up. You want to make sure you don't have any super big clumps in there. And get down at the bottom and get that sourdough starter all mixed in really, really well. Like that. Beautiful. And then clean hands, of course. And I'm just cleaning off my fork. I don't want to skip any of that goodness and miss it. There. Okay. So now I'm going to grab a spatula and I want to make sure that I smush all of the sides down. I want to clean the sides of the jar as best I can. Keep it all together. There we go. Beautiful. All right, let's see what we got going on. And that is how I feed. See, she's already bubbling in the middle there. That's how I feed my sourdough to get put away in the fridge. My sourdough starter. So she's fed. See how thick it is? I'm holding it up to the ceiling. I want it thicker than a Snicker, okay? This is me. This is how I do it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a lid. And I want to put a lid on it. And she's going to go in the fridge with my discard. Everything's getting kept in the fridge because I'm busy. And I'm not going to be using this anytime soon. So I want her to just hang out in the fridge. Here's a lid. And then this is going to just go right in here. And chill. I'm not going to mess with it. It's going to be fine in the fridge for, honestly, weeks. Because it will just slowly feed off that. And then even if I did leave it for, I mean, let's just go out there and say 3 weeks. Say like I had a emergency or, for instance, Olivia's got a surgery coming up. I'm going to feed it and leave it in here. And then it'll just do its thing. It'll eventually start rising. I'll probably show you tomorrow. It's so slow. It will feed, but it's cold. So it's slow going, but it will rise and feed in here. And then probably by like the 4th week, it'll completely have fallen back down. And then you could even develop a little bit of liquid on the top. That's called hooch. And you can just drain that off. And then when I'm ready to use it, if that hooch formed, it might be like a gray color on the top. It might look really gross and suspicious, but just scrape that gray off. It's not mold. It's just part of what happens if you leave it too long. Not a big deal. Scrape the top off. Everything underneath is going to be good to go, and then you'll be able to use it. So that's where that's going. And then I will tell you guys how I reconstitute it when the time comes. The second I push the button. I'm gonna keep that in there. Okay. Hey guys. Today is November 30th and this starter has been sitting in don't look at me, it's staying in there. This has been in the fridge since November 9th. This is kind of what I was talking about with it being so easy just to feed it and throw it in the fridge when you have a bunch of stuff happening in life and you're crazy busy and you don't have time to bake. You just throw it in the fridge and it's does its thing. It just sits in there. Can you open this for me, please? So my youngest had, thank you, my youngest had tonsillectomy, adenoidectomy, and ear tubes put in on the 14th, and so obviously I was not having any time for baking or messing with sourdough starter, so it sat. And I'm going to show you guys what it looks like after it's been sitting. It looks pretty much the same as when I put it in. So today's Thursday. Like I said, it's the 30th, but it's a Thursday. And so this is kind of the key time frame of being able to bake with this on the weekend. I have to take it out now if I want this to be ready by Saturday morning. So I'm taking it out. It's very cold. I just want it to be room temperature by morning. So we're going to lightly put the lid on. And then I'm just going to stick it over here on the counter. And then in the morning, I'm going to feed this. I'm going to put it in its giant jar that I showed you, and it's going to get everything dumped in here. Old Dora is going to get put in here, and I'm going to feed it about halfway, maybe a little less, and then I'm going to let it start doubling in size. Probably when I come home from work tomorrow, it'll be bubbling and looking pretty good, and then before bed tomorrow night, I'm going to probably discard some of it just to make room, and then I'm going to feed it again so that by the morning when I come, this thing should be completely full to the brim with starter, and then we'll be able to start baking. So I just got done doing a bunch of skincare and stuff, getting ready for bed. It's 10:22 at night, so if I'm greasy looking, that's why. But once this gets going and we're ready to bake with it on Saturday, I'm going to try a new recipe. So I'm going to bring you guys along with me for that new recipe. There's a couple people in town that have requested some loaves, and I'm going to deliver. So we're going to get that done, and hopefully they turn out great. And then tomorrow when I have more time and it's not so late, I'm going to show you the way that I started this sourdough starter from scratch. This is the book that I kind of got my ratios from, Melissa K. Norris, Handmade. She obviously has a huge YouTube channel, and she does books and cookbooks, and she just has a lot of great content. And so that's part of what started me on this little kick of, you know, being able to actually do sourdough, is the confidence that she gave me with this book. So I just wanted to, you know, give a reference of where I'm getting my stuff from. I'm not just getting it offline or from, you know, some Pinterest page. It's from an actual source, and she's done a lot of good work. So head over to her channel and check it out. And then tomorrow we will be back, and I'm going to show you how I feed this. Good morning. It is the next morning. My eyes are super puffy this morning. Oh, anyway, I just woke up. It's 7:13. I gotta get going. Gotta get out of the house. I just fed the starter exactly how I showed you earlier. Same thing, nice thick pancake batter consistency, and I'll show you what it looks like. So I put a mark on there. I used a rubber scraper and I pushed everything down, and then I just kind of marked where it's roughly sitting so that when I come home I can show you guys how far it has risen. So nice thick consistency, and I'm just gonna shut it up and let it sit here. It's about 68 to 69 degrees in my house, so I'm keeping it over here away from the window, just trying to keep it somewhat warm. Another thing you can do is put it on top of your fridge, because the heat from the fridge running will rise, obviously, and give a good environment for this to do its thing. I actually need to clean off the top of my fridge, and I'm not showing you that. So I'm going to probably do that, because I'm also putting up our Christmas village, because we're getting ready for Christmas. So I'll be doing that all along the top, and I'll probably put some Christmas village people on top of my fridge too, but that's another story. So we will be back after I'm off work and see how this is doing. Good morning. It is Saturday morning at almost 11 o'clock. And here is the starter. See where I didn't get the flour scraped down very well? It's just a little more chunky there, I guess. But I did feed this again on Friday night. I didn't record it because it was the same thing as before. I ended up not discarding any because when I came home Friday, this had only risen to about here. And I'm like, well, it's still taking a little bit longer to reactivate because I had it in the fridge for so long. I mean, I needed to give it time. So it hadn't risen a whole lot, and I'm like, okay, it just needs some more food. I fed it again with the same kind of ratio I did before, and then this morning I woke up and we got probably about a double rise here. And if I look at the top, it's still kind of got like a active, it's still growing. It's got like a dome on the top. I don't know how to explain that. Like, it's not falling back down. You know, when a dough rises, it's kind of got that little dome shape on top. Whereas this, when it's not rising anymore, it'll start to concave a little bit and fall back down. So now it's still in its active rising stage, I guess, if you want to call it. I am going to bake with it. I'm going to start my process of making my loaves. And this is a new recipe, so you're going to see how it goes along with me. But first, I need to clean my counters because I have a lot of trash. I did some cleaning and restocking the pantry, and I also got a new Christmas present from my husband. Thank you. You know so much I love coffee. So I'm going to clean up, and then we're going to get going on these loaves. Good morning. We are fast forwarding this video to Valentine's Day. Life has been crazy. And I just wanted to make sure that this video was more helpful rather than just slammed together and here you go. Here's a video about sourdough. So we're going to fast forward. Now it's Valentine's Day, and I'm doing a quadruple batch of sourdough loaves. And then this is a recipe that I actually paid for, so I don't think I should share the exact quantities of the recipe, but it's a very simple recipe. It's just water, starter, flour, and it's bread flour, and then I did also grind my own to supplement it, because you do mostly bread flour, but then you also add, for this batch, you add a ton of home ground flour. And then now that's sitting on my counter for 45 minutes. It's doing its thing. It's all incorporating. And then you put some salt and some water and kind of try and dissolve it to help it work into the dough. And then you just massage that into the dough with your hands. And that's it. Those are the only ingredients for this sourdough loaf. So if you can look on Pinterest or find somebody on, Instagram that has a recipe with those ingredients, I think the key for me, what I've found, because I've tried this a couple times, and the first time I did 3 loaves and I only did 2 of them with the fresh ground flour that I did out of my hard white wheat berries. You can use, it says Kamut, I think, K-A-M-U-T is the berry that this recipe lady that I bought from used. But just the white berries have worked great, because in those 3 loaves, when I baked them, the 2 that had the fresh ground flour were way more proofed and, had a beautiful crumb inside than my just plain bread flour bought from the store. So I highly recommend making sure you somehow incorporate some fresh ground flour into your recipe if you're going to be doing that. I'm going to flip this around and I'll show you what my little concoction over here looks like. Okay, so I have 13 minutes left on this timer of it sitting here, and it just looks like a big old batch of wet Play-Doh. But in some spots you can see where it's bubbling because the starter is feeding on all that good stuff I just put in here. It's a pretty shaggy dough. You want it to be shaggy, you don't want it to be super thick. Yeah, that's going to be a good dough. And so now, once this has sat for its 45 minutes, then I'm going to grab my salt and add it in with my fingers. One of the tips is wet fingers. I'll bring you along and show you how I do all of this. I just don't feel comfortable sharing the exact recipe because I paid for it. It's not like it was something I found on Pinterest and I can share. But So that sucks that I can't give you a real recipe with the bread, but I am going to find a sandwich bread, and I will share that recipe with you, because you can use discard. I found a discard sourdough sandwich bread recipe, and I actually have an astronomical amount of sourdough discard left in here. I have this whole thing, and then I think I have, yeah, I have a whole nother one back there with the green lid. So I have 2 whole quarts of sourdough discard that we got to do stuff with. And I think for me, that's the one thing that it's harder that using active starter is one thing, but then all your discard, not wasting it, trying to figure out what you want to make with it is the other thing. So you don't waste. Here's one thing I did make that was super good. These are...
Is it almost over?
Yep, one sec. We're making breakfast for Olivia too. Was these Parmesan garlic crackers. These crackers are nice and crisp, see that? And they last for a long time. And all that is olive oil and sourdough starter. I'm going to show you how to do that too. I know you're hungry. I'm getting it, girlfriend. So we're going to feed Olivia, and then I'll show you what else we do with this when the time comes. So I got myself a fancy new tripod off of Amazon. It also works as like a selfie stick so I can hold it better. And then it also has feet so I can set it up on my counter. And now I can have videos to show you guys a little bit better. So I'll reposition you here. And this is my mixture that's been sitting for 45 minutes. So now all I'm going to do is take my salt that I have in some water. It's not dissolving very rapidly, and that's okay. This is just going to help it with dissolving. I use Redmond's real salt, so it's kind of got a pink color to it. I'm just going to take that and pour it all over. Get that out of there. And then now I'm going to go wet my hands and get them nice and wet. Take my watch off because that could be a disaster. And my ring probably too. And then wet hands with this dough, and we're going to work this in here. Okay, hands are soaking wet. We're just going to work this into the dough. And then if it starts to stick to your fingers like this, just take off what you can and then go get your hands wet again, and that'll help with sticking. So now we're re-wet. We're just massaging the salt into this dough. And then it's also going to be time to do a stretch and fold. And that's just exactly as it sounds, is you're stretching the dough and folding it over on itself. So we're starting to stick a little bit more. That's okay. We're not really losing a lot of dough, so it's not super big deal. But if I start getting a lot more sticking, that's when you want to go get some water. And some people just keep a bowl of water next to them when they're working, but I'm right by my sink, so it's not a big deal for me. I think I got most of that salt worked in. And so now, since this is such a big batch, I'm probably going to stretch it from the middle a little bit, just to fold in the sides. There we go. There we go. So now we're going to do what they call stretch and folds, and this builds your gluten strands in your dough. So I'm going to re-wet here, and I'm going to take a side of it, stretch it, and fold it to the middle. Take a stretch, fold it in the middle. Turn it, stretch up a side, fold it in the middle. And as you go and as you do these, because we're going to do a lot of sets of this, your dough is going to get a lot stronger and stick and hold together a lot better. You'll kind of see that as we go along. Okay, so now we're starting to form a little bit of a ball. It's pulling away from the sides of my bowl pretty well, so it's already starting to form those strands. So now what I'm going to do is set a timer for 30 minutes, and we're going to come back and do some more. Okay, 30 minutes is up, and now we are going to do something called a coil fold. Because this is so big, I'm just going to scoop it up and lift it from the center and put it back down on itself. So coming in with wet hands, and I'll just look at how much stronger it is now that it sat for that 30 minutes. Isn't that nuts? So then I turned it. I'm going to get wet hands again, and then I'm going to come in here, grab in the middle. And this is also creating all that wonderful...
Hello.
Yes, they say hello. All that wonderful bubbly goodness. All those air bubbles inside of our dough. So yeah, she's getting a lot stronger now. Whoa.
Can you send this to Grandma Vicky?
No, I'm doing this for YouTube, sweetheart. I'm doing it for YouTube. Okay. Now that we've got those done, it's definitely holding...
on our YouTube?
It's definitely holding a lot better together now. It's really pulling away from the sides of the bowl, and it's becoming more of a ball, a dough ball. So now I'm going to cover it, and we're going to let it sit for another 30 minutes, and then I'll probably do the stretch and folds from the side to the center now that it's just a little bit stronger. Okay, our 30 minutes is up from the last set of stretch and folds that we did, and now we're going to do one last set of stretch and folds, and then we're going to let it sit and bulk at room temperature. Might take about an hour and a half. It's kind of colder in my house today, so I'm going to try and maybe put this in the oven to keep it warmer. You want it to double in size, which the bowl that I have it in right now, I'm not sure is going to allow for me to double in size, but we'll see what we can do, because it's already 3/4 of the way up here. So I'm going to wet my hands, and then we're going to do some stretch and folds to the middle. Okay, so I'm grabbing it and throwing it in the middle. Just like that.
I want to see this. I want to see the video. Whoa. That looks so good.
That looks good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like you're making pizza.
It looks like pizza dough, kind of, huh?
Uh-huh.
There. Okay.
Ah.
So there it is. We're taking the tea towel and covering it again. And I'm probably going to stick this in my oven to double in size. One thing I did leave out is this is wet now. I did wet my tea towel down to just help it from drying out on the top. So wet tea towel, it's going in the oven. No heat on, no nothing. If you have a light in your oven, I would turn that light on. That helps keep your oven warm. Warmer, but I don't have a light. It burnt out. I got to fix it. I did, however, get a bread proofer for, I think it was $100 that we spent on it. It's like one of the ones from Subway. I'll show you that here once I stick this in the oven. But this is wet down to keep the top of my dough saturated, wet, not dry out. And then we'll come back and check this. Hopefully I don't overflow out of the bowl. I need larger bowls. Here's my bread proofer. It's got 4 racks, which I think I could probably find some more to put in there. It's got the little water tray down there that you fill with water to keep it nice and hydrated in there. You can control your humidity and everything and your temperature. So when we got this, the guy did turn it on and showed us that everything worked. So it's just got a plug-in, a normal outlet plug-in. It doesn't need anything fancy. And this way I can start baking a lot more and proofing it in here because my house is cooler. It always stays colder in the winter. So in the winter I can use this to proof bread and hopefully start selling it, because with ND cottage laws, I'm allowed to sell baked goods out of my home. So I'm hoping to sell sourdough and homemade white sandwich bread, just regular yeast bread. I want to do cinnamon rolls. I want to do bagels. I want to do all kinds of baked goods and sell them around here local to my community. Okay, we are back, and here is my dough. I'd say pretty much it doubled in size. I also got supper going here, so don't mind that. It is to the brim now. I'll just whip this off real quick so I can show you. Oh, look how nice and jiggly she is. That's what I call sourdough. See, I got air pockets going on in there. Oh, yeah. There was a big bubble I saw. A bubble there. So it's happy. It's definitely fermenting. I'm going to let it sit for a little while longer. And then I just kind of wanted to show you how I'm going to put these in the fridge to proof them. So you can buy these on Amazon or wherever. Bannetons, I believe is how you pronounce it. And these are what you can use to shape your loaves. And then you are supposed to dust it with rice flour. And then once you shape your dough, which I'll show you how to do that when the time comes, you flip it upside down. So the top is inside of is upside down basically in here. And then it sits in here and proofs. Another way to do that is to find a bowl that you might have. They have some at the Dollar Tree that are this good size, probably about a hand. I didn't really measure with a tape measure, but they're not huge loaves. And that was my biggest mistake or like misconception about sourdough loaves, is that they were these huge rustic loaves. I mean, you can make them big like that, but generally they're just, you know, a decent size like this. So I just grabbed some tea towels that I got off Amazon. I think it was like a 20 pack for 10 bucks. It was super cheap. And I line my bowls with that. They're all roughly the same size bowl. And then I'm just going to take my sifter. Excuse me, you could use a sifter. You know what? I might use a sifter because I think that'll be easier. But for the sake of showing you using what you have, if you have a mesh strainer, all you have to do is grab a little bit of flour out of your mesh strainer. And I put it on a paper towel so I didn't make a huge mess. And then I'm actually going to set up my tripod so I can show you. Okay, so now we're just going to dust like this. You just tap the side and it's dusting your bowl.
Mommy.
Yeah, honey?
Look.
Oh, wow, that looks good.
That's easier. Right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So we're flouring that pretty well. Oop.
Did you have this before?
There. Yes, I have had those before. They're pretty good. So now this will be able to, once I put my loaf in there, I can fold this over. Whereas this one, I'm going to have to get a towel and put over it. So this kind of almost works better, I'd say. So now that these are ready, I'm going to set them to the side. And then I'm going to use this space to make and prep my loaves. Okay, my dough is ready to go, and I'm going to separate it out into 4 different loaves. I'm just flouring my surface, and then I'm going to dump the whole thing out. And when I dumped it out was when I realized that I think this dough got a little too shaggy. It did not end up being like the other one because it split when I dumped it. See, I'm actually scraping out some more dough here. I was getting a little worried because it was super wet in the bottom. Maybe I could have left it a little bit longer to proof. I know it's not super warm in my house. That could have been a factor. I could have added maybe just another like half a cup of flour to the whole batch. Hindsight's 20/20. So I just decided to go for it and just see if we could make it work. We're just gonna go full send because I was not about to waste all of this flour and all my time. I was just gonna give it a shot and we're gonna see what happens. So I'm gonna get it as put together as I can and quarter it out. So now is the time when you want to put a little flour down and you're going to be twisting your dough basically and pulling it towards yourself to create tension on your loaf. I started to try and do that with my hands, and as you can see, the dough just fell apart. And it was so shaggy and so wet that it was not creating any tension. And so this was when I knew I definitely needed to use my bench scraper, because that was the only way I was going to get some kind of tension on the dough. And I added as much flour as I could to make it a little more workable. And I tried again with my hands to pull it. You're supposed to pull it towards you to pull, see, and make that tension to make your dough ball on the top nice and smooth. And it just wasn't working. So I just kept going for it. When I made the other batch of this same exact recipe, I did not have this problem. So my only thing I can think of is that I went way too light on the flour and I just was off on the consistency. So trial and error. Don't be afraid to try, and don't be afraid to just go ahead and do your best and try and make it work, because as you guys will see, these loaves actually didn't turn out too bad. So just keep going. Don't give up. Don't throw it away. It can be frustrating, as I am very frustrated right now trying to make these, but it's going to be fine. You know, this is how we learn. And the more you work with it and the more you see how it's supposed to feel and how it's supposed to look, you'll be able to use that in your baking going forward. Good morning. It is the next day. All of my loaves sat in the fridge overnight, and it is now 10:44. Olivia's eating. She had to tell everyone. And I have my Dutch ovens in the oven right now at 475. And I'm actually gonna take, you better quit. And I'm gonna take a cookie sheet pan and put it underneath both of on the bottom rack below the Dutch ovens, so that it helps the bottoms not burn on my bread, but it'll still get the heat that it needs. So right now I'm going to grab my little, I'll show you real quick. I have these little, they're basically replacing the parchment paper that I would use, and they're just little loaf holders, and you can set them in, and these are basically the handles to set them in the oven. So I like these. I used them the last time I did it. The last time I baked, and these work really well. They don't stick. They're silicone. They're fabric inside, but like coated in silicone. They don't stick. I mean, they also help as a little more added protection to the bottom of the loaf to keep it from burning. So I'm just gonna set this on the counter, and then I'm gonna flop my loaves out of the bowls and get a little bit of flour on it, and then we're gonna score it. And we score it because we want to control where the loaf is gonna break. Because when you do bake these, they do expand quite a bit in the oven. And so we just kind of control where the break is gonna be in the bread to make it pretty. It's just visual, it doesn't matter. You could just throw it in there and let it break however you want if you don't care. Oftentimes people just do a big score along the side just to keep it from exploding kind of like on the sides and making it all messed up. So that's the reason for scoring. And now I'm going to put this down and I will show you what we're doing here. Once I got this loaf flopped out, I was starting to be a little bit more confident that these might actually work. They looked kind of more like a loaf. They weren't, you know, losing their shape when I put them down on the little holder. They were holding their loaf shape, and so I thought, you know, we're just gonna go for it. I think this will be okay. I'm flouring it on the top. You're supposed to use rice flour. I'm using all-purpose flour. I'm kind of breaking the rules here, but it works. It's okay. And then I'm also using a box blade that I just got. It's brand new. I haven't used it on anything else, so it's not like gross or contaminated or anything. And I'm just making a heart. The hearts on my first batch didn't really turn out that well. They still kind of look like hearts, but it's okay. And then my second batch of 2 that I did, I actually went and got my chicken surgical knives for when we butcher chickens, and I grabbed one of the brand new blades out of there, and that worked a lot better. So on my list to purchase is most definitely a bread blade to be able to cut a little bit better. So I'm not an artist, and I don't know what I'm doing with bread art. I'm still learning, but I want to do a heart because just showing my love to my friends. I want to deliver these today. If the loaves turn out good, I'm delivering them to my friends, and I just want them to look nice. So we're doing a heart. Okay, so I'm just gonna bake those for 25 minutes with the lid on at 475, and then I'm gonna pop the lids off of them after the 25 minutes are done, and I'm gonna drop the temp down to 450 and bake it for another 15-ish minutes, 20 minutes, depending on, I just wanna get that golden crust on the top, you know, like sourdough is known for. So I'm gonna do that. I'm really not hopeful for these loaves. And so I'm just gonna share what happens because it's part of trial and error with sourdough. And the funny thing is I did this recipe 3 weeks ago, I think, and it came out perfectly. Like, to a T, it was perfect. And that was a doubled recipe. So I think maybe this time doing it quadrupled, I kind of had too much hydration, I think. I had too much liquid. I probably should have added a little bit more flour in my mix because it was a little wet, but I thought that was kind of how what I was going for. But I should have just listened to my gut and put in a little more flour because it was kind of hard to handle. It was a little more sticky than I thought it should be, but that's part of sourdough. It's the trial and error and getting it right. And once you do it over and over again, it's just like cooking or baking anything. Once you make a meal 3 or 4 times, you kind of get the feel of how it goes, and then you don't have to look at the recipe anymore, and you just do it. So that's kind of what I'm doing with sourdough right now. I can do other, you know, discard things. The discard's a lot more forgiving than this active, you know, active starter where you're not using any yeast, you're just using your sourdough as the leavening agent. And so it's a lot of trial and error, so don't beat yourself up about it. If these loaves don't turn out, then I'm not gonna go give them to my friends. It's not a big deal. But you know who will eat them? My family. Because the texture is gonna be fine. They're just gonna be kind of flatter, I think, with all this hydration. I don't know if they're gonna rise like they're supposed to, but they'll be good to make, you know, dip them in soup or have them, you know, you could also, I've seen people do when they have sourdough that messes up, they just chop it up into squares, put a little olive oil and some herbs and seasonings on it, and they bake them and make croutons with it for their salad. So I'll consider doing that too if we get down to it. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, here are my loaves. They came out, well, this one is flatter than the other. Isn't that crazy? They're the same exact dough. But anyway, this one is the good one. Like, I'm eating my words. Maybe that dough was fine, but my heart didn't come out as beautiful as I had hoped. That's okay, because see, look how much it rose. I mean, see how much it cracked. So the next time I do it, I might do, if I do a heart design, I might make it a little bit bigger on the loaf and see if that helps. This one, it sounds pretty fluffy inside, so it might not be too bad. I am keeping one loaf for my family, so maybe if this is the only loaf that looks kind of wonky, I might just I might just keep it for my family because it still sounds fluffy inside. It's nice and crunchy on the outside like it's supposed to be. Oops, I'm filming nothing here. So, yeah, I'm kind of impressed at how that turned out. I thought it was going to be a flop. So I'm going to go grab the other two that are in the fridge. I'm going to stick these back in the oven, cranked her back up to 475, let those heat up a little more, put these on a cooling rack, and then we'll get the other loaves baking, and I will show you how those look once they're all done. Okay, second loaves came out. The heart ended up looking a little bit better. This side did great, this side not so much. This one, well, you know, also not so great of a heart anymore, but that's okay. This same thing happened. We had more of a round loaf, and this one was more flat. I'm wondering if it might be, one second, these bowls that I used, maybe? Because these bowls are the same thing, but one's like a strainer. So I'm wondering if the shape of them was weird. I'm not sure. But not a problem. I gotta let them cool. Yeah, this one still needs, I'm gonna keep this one, I think, for my family. Nope, I'll keep this one because, my goodness, I'm filming nothing, sorry. These three will be my give loaves, and then this one I think we'll keep for my family. So I gotta let this sit and cool for about an hour, I'd say. We're going to finish up homeschool, and then I should be ready to cut it, and we can see what it looks like. And I did go out and get this knife that we use for chicken butchering to help cut the last loaf that I did, because it was, that other box cutter was not doing it. So I'll just use that for when I need to score my loaves. But there they are. They turned out pretty well for the most part. We will have the true test when we cut this open. All right, I made a few cuts on the bread so we could see what the inside looks like. Nice airy pockets in there. It is maybe a little bit doughy, but that could be because it's still pretty warm. Maybe could have just these two did bake longer than this one, I think. So they maybe could have baked a couple minutes longer, the second batch of loaves that I did. But all in all, it turned out pretty good. I'm going to have my taste tester over here taste it for me and see what he thinks. But we got the loaves, and if he gives me the seal of approval, then I will bring these to my friends. So there you have it. That's about as far as I am in my bread baking journey with sourdough. It's a lot of trial and error. Everything that I've read or watched, everybody has to go through just the process of working with your dough and working with your starter and really learning, reading the dough is basically what it comes down to. And I'm not even remotely good at that yet. But I'm getting there. I have edible dough, good, edible bread, good products. I just need to work on my rise. And I think after I get that rise and the consistency really narrowed down, I think it'll be just like second nature after that. So moral of the story is just keep working with it, and you will find your niche. You will find your the way that you like to make your bread. So just don't give up. You can't, it's really, really hard to kill your sourdough starter. So just go ahead and give it a shot. Try it. There's a lot of help online, especially nowadays. Back when I first got my sourdough starter from my friend, that wasn't a big thing that people were doing. And so trying to find it online and learn about it was really hard, few and far between articles to actually teach you what to do. So now there's a big wealth of knowledge out on the internet. So definitely research, watch other videos, practice with it. Don't be afraid to get in there and just go for it. If it comes out hard as a rock, chop it up and make it into croutons, or chop it up and put it in the oven for a little while until it gets all dried out and blend it up into breadcrumbs. I mean, you won't be out of, it won't be a total waste. So just definitely give it a shot, and you might come to love it. If you hate it, stick with yeast bread. Actually, I'm going to do some more videos coming up on how I make my homemade sandwich bread, and then how you could, which I don't do it a lot, but it's super easy, especially if you're a working parent, using a bread machine. It's a piece of cake. My bread machine actually would keep my loaf warm until I got home from work. So I would wake up at 5:30, get ready to leave the house at 5:30 in the morning, and I would have all of my ingredients measured out the night before, and then I would just pour in the liquid ingredients and the yeast in the morning and hit my button and start my loaf. And it takes about 3.5 hours in my bread machine to make a loaf, and it would just keep it warm in the bread machine all day. So then I would come home and we would have fresh bread at home. So I'm going to make a video on that and kind of do some more kitchen stuff as we're getting into the spring time around North Dakota. We're going to be doing a lot more planting, starting seeds, all that good stuff. But in the meantime, I just do kitchen stuff, so I'll try and bring you guys along with me for that. So I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll talk to you in the next video. Bye, guys.